Attention, attention everyone, attention. I've gathered you all here today to discuss the ongoing epidemic. Oh, geese peas, for God's sake, stop hiding behind your flowery language and call it what it is. It's a goddamned murder spree. Yes, all right. Now, look, nothing we've tried has worked so far. So you all know I've resigned to being more open and honest about the situation. We're beyond panic now and back into focus. And it would seem that one bit of continuity we can track is that when we have clearer heads, these murders ebb rather than flow. We've discussed many a theory and engaged in many a strategy, but to no avail. No matter the frequency, they continue. All reports are similar, but always with a new piece of something as well. This has been posited by our guest speaker today as a second piece of continuity. I'll allow him to extrapolate further. Thank you, Lord Mayor. Your esteemed leader is correct. The ebb and flow of this situation could be a significant indicator of the perpetrator's motivation, perhaps even their confidence in committing these crimes. But it is the second piece of connecting evidence that paints a much larger picture. And I would put forward the idea that it is less ebb and flow and more wax and wane of its capabilities. In a quite literal sense, our cooler heads prevail over its power. What on earth is this quack talking about? Please, let me continue. You'll better understand if you allow me to go through every motion and show you how they work together. Now, you know when you were children and your elders would scare you with stories of the bogeyman beneath your bed, or the nightwood trolls come snatch you at the edge of the forest. What purpose did that serve? Well, same as it does now when you tell the tales to your own children. It felt cruel to be instilled with such a fear as a child, but it kept you safe from harm, as you all know now. Well, this situation here is quite the opposite in its way. Same but different. I've come to tell you that there is power in belief, and not just that of a cleric and her god, or a witch and his eerie patron, but a different kind of belief, not so different than those that practice a rather applicable style of thaumaturgy. The point I will now try to guide you all through is this. Where there is power in belief, there is also power in disbelief.
Hey there, creatures, and welcome to Encounter This, a podcast exploration of the creatures from Pathfinder 2nd Edition and the lore that surrounds them. Hello there, creatures, and welcome to Encounter This. I am James, the man kid, which is weird seeing it written out. With me, fondling his pectorals, is Freeman, the myth iced him. I think that might be an Entourage reference somehow.
Maybe. You tell me.
Today, I've never seen an episode of Entourage.
Me neither.
I don't know anything about it, but I'm pretty sure it's not my thing.
I know Jeremy Piven's in it. That's all I know.
Oh, I do like Jeremy Piven.
Yeah.
What a weird dude. Now that we've gotten that encounter out of the way,
now that we're off to a deflated start.
Yeah, just ruining the app right off the bat. Which I will now introduce. It is this is episode 120, and we are covering a creature called the Brainchild. And if you'd like to follow along, you can check that out on the Bestiary 3, page 38. None of this gives me any sort of indication on what kind of a creature a Brainchild is, but everything about the name of it makes me uncomfortable. Like I think of like a child version of Mojo Jojo.
I'm so excited for this episode. It is going to be so very different from the normal episode. The format has to have changed because of what this creature is and because of Well, you know me, I got a little carried away. I got a little carried away with my prep on this
Surprise.
one. And by a little carried away, I mean this was kind of last minute to record, today, but also was over a month in the writing and preparation of the episode, which is, sometimes you can throw one together in an afternoon. This was a lot more work, and you'll know why soon. But
just to give the listener some reference, without exposition, this is 23 pages. A normal up for us is like 4 to 8 pages.
Yeah. Get ready for a lot of ranting from me. Not ranting, but it doesn't matter. We'll get to it. But what I do want to say is I think this creature is right up your alley, James, in certain ways. On one hand, it requires a certain level of prep, but the prep is very strongly rooted in not prepping. It is strongly rooted in planting a seed and letting the pieces fall where they may, and then planning the creature accordingly, which I think is sort of your thing in many ways. But let's start right away with this creature. Let's start with the game lore. It is very simple, very straightforward. What we can say about the Brainchild is that when rumors swirl and circulate, and when they do so intensely and persistently, and they become so vivid and real that those who speak them, they sometimes come to life. A Brainchild can be born in this way, and often thanks to the rumors involving a victim of one of your favorite spells, Phantasmal Killer.
The heartbreak is real.
Yeah, the heartbreak is real. The resulting Brainchild of something like that, an event like that, becomes a ruthless and remorseless killer. Its power grows with the more belief that has gone into it. And when it is hunting a believer of it, it grows in power and subsequently shrinks with power when faced with skepticism. This makes them only as powerful as one is able to think they are. It's a very strange, sort of obtuse and vague sort of approach. It's basically simply driven by the need to stalk and kill, but gossip, rumor, and superstition can alter the way it acts and alter the way it behaves as it hunts. That's literally
fucking cool.
It's literally all the lore. That's all there is. There's a little sidebar that emphasizes the need to set up this creature, which made me think of you. You do have to set up, you need to plant those rumors and see where they go. You need to alter its tactics and its abilities and its behaviors based on how the players perceive these rumors, how they support or reject them. It becomes really important. You have to be careful too. It does mention, I didn't put my notes here, but you have to be careful too that not giving it too many abilities, otherwise you make it too powerful by mistake. But we'll get to that when we get to Homebrew.
Okay.
But simple examples given are something like, oh, you hear along the road or in town, oh, I hear the beast of Chimney Hill can walk through fire unburnt. If that is believed, it gives it that power. Or I woke with a pounding headache. Old Selby's dog must be lurking about again. That not only gives it some sort of power, but it gives it a form as well, which is why we ought to talk about the artwork that we have for this creature, which is really quite awesome. However, it is not what its form is ever, or maybe it is if you plant the right seeds for it to look this way. It's vicious looking and it's pretty awesome, but from what you gather from the lore and definitely in the mechanics is that it can take on any form that is suggested by the rumors, such as a dog, like old Selby's dog, or some sort of beast of Chimney Hill. It can transform and change into those forms. So we have this stock image effectively for the Brainchild,
right?
But in no way does it have to look like this.
For audio listeners, it looks like the Joker from DC Comics wearing a noob Cybot costume from Mortal Kombat.
I mean, yeah, it definitely does, doesn't it?
It also kind of looks like one of the creatures in Death Note. I've never seen it, but the second I threw this up, I immediately pictured that thing,
one of the death gods. Yeah, I could see that.
I don't
totally
know.
See that. Yeah,
the thing that Willem Dafoe voiced in the live action version.
Yeah, the one we don't talk about.
It's the extent of my experience with Death Note is that one scene with Willem
Death Note's a
Dafoe.
really
So-
cool anime. It's not terribly long. It's got like a short series kind of thing, and it's awesome.
Oh, cool.
I definitely do recommend. But yeah, you're not wrong. It's got that sort of like gray skin, gray white skin, kind of clownish, elongated kind of look to it. These vicious claws and this wicked smile and these eerie bits of clothing. It's a neat,
Like
neat little
made
image.
of fog. Yeah.
It definitely evokes like a this is a otherworldly, slightly bestial assassin, which is sort of at the sort of, if there is nothing too specific to be believed about it, then surely it takes this form, as sort of non-specific approach to a hunter and stalker. That is not, just something trained.
One of the things I do want to touch on for the audio listeners is that it's got these really like elongated hands with these long nails, and its left hand appears to be dripping something, but its right hand is like crackling with some variety of energy, and it's the same color as the spiral of Pharasma. So I'm wondering if this thing has any connection to the Boneyard or the River of Souls.
Interesting thought, just based on the aesthetic. Yeah. And it's like, it seems to have this cape, but not a cape. It's like, it's kind of whisked out into like smoke and then particles, and it seems to be really incorporeal and almost non-existent and barely existing at all, beyond its pauldrons, which itself is like somewhere between fur and feathers. It's very non-specific in many ways, isn't it?
I think that upper piece is called a mantle.
Yeah, a mantle. Good call. Yeah.
But yeah, it's a really cool art. It's really I honestly can't look away from it. Like every time I feel like I'm seeing something new. It's got these brooches that almost look like owl skulls. Like it's really neat.
It's got like teeth hanging from the rim of the hood of its cloak. And the cloak is over its eyes, so it's as if it can't see. Like it's covering its eyes, but does it need eyes? That's the question. It's all about what the rumors are for this creature. So I think the artwork is really cool. I think you're right. There's so many small things in it. You're always finding something new the longer you look at it, but that one new thing almost like pulls away from something else that you might have assumed about it already. It's really neat.
So if you're an audio listener, you can find that image on our Instagram at Uncharted North or Uncharted No, or if you scroll down to your description, there'll be a link directly to the Insta as well as to the show notes page where you can see another image of it.
So let's get right into the mechanics, because that's where the meat of this creature comes in. Okay. There's a mythology and
consistency
folklore. I forgot
consistency.
Sorry. So we talked about that. There is none. So we're going to mechanics. Sorry, it's my bad. We talked about this.
Just right to mechanics.
Well, I shouldn't say that there's no mythology and folklore, but rather literally everything could attach to this creature. So I wasn't about to start like pulling things from the ether. But the mechanics, this is where the meat of this creature is, because the lore of it is sort of part of the mechanics. Like you kind of have to build your lore alongside the mechanics here. It's not whether or not the mechanics are reflective of the lore, like we often try to look at and kind of compare. But we'll start going down the basic stuff here. Okay, it's a level 11 creature, so it's nothing. It's not some random shadow lurking in the corner of a small town. It's got some heft to it. AC of 30, HP of 20. Stock size is large, though this can shift. Its traits. This is probably one of the early cool things. Its traits are illusion and mental. That's it. Which means that there is no stock standard recall knowledge for this creature. Like we found that in the trolls too, didn't we?
We did,
because they
but that
weren't
was
quite beasts, they weren't humanoids, and they weren't giants. So it was kind of a strange thing. So I would assume, although I didn't really come across anything that specified this, I would assume that the knowledge check you might allow, the skill allowed might be based on the rumors, but even that in and of itself can be deceptive. Because you might believe it's a beast, but it's not really a beast. You just believe that it is. So maybe the recall knowledge you throw out there gives you some idea of how its beast abilities might work. But from the GM seat, you might be, by allowing that, letting them believe more and more that these beast-like attributes are true, which is not in favor of the players, as you will find as we go. The more they believe, the worse this thing becomes.
Right. I'm not a big fan of tiered checks, but this could be an interesting implementation. So like if you think it's a beast, you've got to roll a knowledge nature and you've got to hit, a certain threshold, and that's when you realize that, oh, actually you should be rolling knowledge occult for aberration or whatever.
Right.
And then you like there's a tiered unlock the actual recall knowledge check. That could be kind of interesting.
Imagine if you have someone in your party, like a wizard that has chosen to have lore illusion, for example, and they might never consider rolling that against something that is described as the Beast of Chimney Hill, but it is incredibly accurate and apt for that situation. So, do you suggest they use it as the GM? Do you nudge them into it and slowly reveal that it's maybe an option? That's kind of up to you. You don't want to bury the lead too much, but suddenly things that don't seem applicable are applicable if you give the right hints.
Yeah, neat.
Yeah,
I'm already enthralled.
So yeah, I did look up what the DC ought to be on Archives of Deaths. They didn't list one, but I did check in on Foundry and looked at some other similar level rare creatures. Rare making it a very hard check, so there's usually like a +5 to the DC. From what I could gather, it's around a DC 30, if not even a little bit higher, given what this creature is. I think it's supposed to be DC 30 for the rarity of its creature, which is one of its traits. It is a rare one, but I would argue it's even higher based on the fact that it doesn't even have a skill, base skill for it. So it does have a speed of 30 and a basic fly of 30, which you could definitely play with, I think. Again, based on belief, you could have it burrowing. You could have it swimming. You could also have, people believe in a dog that flies. You can keep that fly speed.
I mean, a cow jumped over the moon, right?
Right, exactly. It has telepathy 100 feet. It's something called universal language. 100 feet so far. Universal language we will get to. We'll see that below.
Okay.
And we have it has dark vision, which you wouldn't really be too surprised about. It's got some great stats: 4 strength, 5 dex, 4 con, 2 int, 3 wisdom, 7 charisma, which is reflected very much in its skill bonuses, because it's right in there with deception, intimidation, and performance, with lots of boosts, and decent one to society, because that's where it's basically conjured and created, and stealth for it to be sneaking around doing its evil work. I'm a little bit surprised that it doesn't have some bonuses into, say, like acrobatics and athletics, but again, I think that comes into the belief system, which is reflected in the mechanics as we go. We're looking at a reasonably even keel on its saves: 21 fortitude, 22 reflex, 18 will. So it's no slouch in any of them, really. No damages resistances, but it is standardly weak to mental damage with a mental 10. So an extra 10 damage as we go. And then this thing's got some really interesting immunities as well. Death effects, makes sense. Yep. Detection, which includes things like magic, or like detect magic.
Yeah.
I'd never seen this before, so I had to double check it. It was like detect magic, detect alignment, which is now being removed with the remaster, but like discern location, know direction. Like these things have the detect trait attached to them. Not that I think know direction would pinpoint this creature, but there's this detection trait attached to certain abilities. It's not many things, but I had kind of definitely had passed over that as I've learned the game.
Is it a remaster thing, or do we just fucking ignore it?
No, I think. No, I don't think it is, because it's on. As of this recording, Archives of Deaths is still not updated, and that is on Archives of Deaths as where I got that information. So
cool.
It's been there, but it's just not super common. Also immune to diseased, doomed, necromancy, which is now no longer applicable, and scrying. Which falls into the detection thing. But detection and scrying are two things I've never seen listed as a specific immunity, which I thought was kind of cool. But sort of makes sense, because its existence is so I don't know, just non-specific. It is so, just kind of like floating around at all times. How it exists and how it operates and when and where is so loose and obtuse.
Yeah. And I think as we get into these higher level occult arcane things, we're going to see a lot more immunity to scrying. Maybe not as much as we saw in like 5e or anything like that, but I think it's going to start popping up when the more of these creatures on the other side of 10 we tackle.
Yeah, for sure. Quick note about the universal language is that basically anything spoken by the Brainchild is perceived to the listener as if in their native tongue. That's what that ability does. So, which is kind of a neat hint that you could throw out there, is that if it's speaking to the party and everyone understands what it's saying, and someone asks, what is it speaking? Oh, it's speaking Elvish. And somebody goes, well, I don't understand. Like, oh, no, yes, you do. To you, it's speaking common. Suddenly there's a red flag going around the party, which I think is really cool.
Yeah.
It also has an ability called persistent memory. So if it is destroyed, the Brainchild returns if any single individual still fully believes it exists. And it will do so in 2D. Yeah. It will do so in 2D 4 days and within 100 feet of any one believer of its existence. So
how do you
it's
kill an idea? Jesus
right. it's a conundrum and a half on that one. I'm not even really sure how to go about it, but it's pretty cool. Let's talk about its attacks. It's basically got two things: one melee, one range, both called illusory weapon. The melee is 4d6 plus 10 mental damage plus urban legend, which we'll look at below. And it has illusion, mental, and occult traits. The ranged weapon is pretty much the exact same, but has a range increment of 100 feet. It is a 46 plus 6 as opposed to 10 mental damage. Now, whether or not you reveal it to be mental damage upon any hit to your players is in question, I think. And we'll see that in Urban Legend and ask that question a little bit more. Has no other sort of multi-action abilities or any reactions. It does have some spells. Occult innate spells, as you might expect, DC 30. Cast 2 cantrips at 6th rank with Ghost Sound and Message. Definitely just like, fucking with people's brains.
What does heightened message do?
That's a good question. Heightened message, heightened to 3rd, increases the spell's range to 500 feet. So
right.
6th, not much, but 3rd, pretty wild. You can start planting seeds from a very large distance. Ghost Sound looks like it's sort of the same. 3rd is 60 feet from 30, and heightened to 5th is 120 feet. So similar idea.
And I like message. Like, it has its uses. It's very specific. Whereas Ghost Sound is one of those spells that I never use, but I always try to find a way to use it.
Right. Yeah. The cool thing about message with this creature too, I think, is that you send a message, if I recall correctly, someone can give a response back. So you can play with someone at a 500-foot reach. You can play with someone planting a seed via a random message into their brain. And then based on their response, if you ask the right question or say the right thing and their response enhances the belief in this creature, the creature then can transform because it's so direct as well. And it might change its behaviors based on that.
I just had a flurry of activity in my brain piece for Homebrew. So
Wicked. Start making notes. Let's talk about okay, sorry, actually we still got some spells here. It's got Dimension Door, rank 4, can cast twice. It's got Phantasmal Killer, and guess at rank 5. It's the image that it produces in your mind is always an image that resembles itself. And then at rank 6, it has some options again based on the urban legend ability, which we will now discuss. This is the meat of this creature here.
Okay.
It affects all other things we've talked about. So the Brainchild, urban legend. The Brainchild is only sustained by the reputation that precedes them. Mindless creatures are immune to the Brainchild and cannot perceive them. The Brainchild's size, yeah, it's kind of perfect, right? The Brainchild's size, features, and items, including the appearance of their attacks, match those of the perception and expectation of its foes. If foes see different things, the Brainchild chooses which manifests. If foes believe the Brainchild has any of the abilities listed below, it has it. If there are different particulars in an ability, such as belief in fire immunity or immunity to poisons. The Brainchild chooses which one. It does not get both. A foe can attempt to seek or sense motive versus the deception DC to attempt to disbelieve an individual ability. If at any point no one believes in a single ability, the Brainchild loses that ability immediately. So you can't just do it for your whole party. They've all got to do it for the same thing.
And that's DC 32 for those who are paying attention.
Yeah, for the deception DC, yeah. Which is no slouch. I mean, you're level 11, so it's it's doable, certainly. But yeah,
but doable times 4.
Doable times 4. It's a long combat if you're failing it all the time. So here are the ability options it offers. Things like Tremor Sense, 100 feet, imprecise as a sense. Immunity to one type of damage, Magic School, which is no longer applicable. So which makes me wonder if this is going to be featured in the Monster Core. It's not out as of this recording. Or a condition. So damage type, Magic School, or condition. Not 2 of the 3, not all 3, only one of the 3. Weakness 10 to 1 damage type other than mental, because it already has the mental weakness. Resistance 10 to physical damage unless cold iron or silver. That's either, not both. It could have frightful presence at 100-foot aura, which is huge. DC 28s, yep. Which effectively just, as you would imagine, offers up the frightened condition as you sort of wade your way through this aura. It still has the I believe the immunity if you critically succeed. Regardless of your saving throw, you're immune for a minute.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's not too bad. I mean, it can be bad, but it's nice and balanced. It also has the possibility of having 1d6 extra damage on strikes of a type the foe believes in. So this made me think about its strikes, these illusory weapons it has. Let's say it's shooting off they believe it shoots a bow or something. That damage does mental damage, but the question is, do people believe that it does piercing damage, that it's an expert in the bow? And does any resistances to piercing damage apply because it is all in their head? Are they suddenly ignoring bits of this damage based on their own character sheet and stat block? And do they believe that they power the arrows with fire and this 1d6 extra damage comes in as fire, even though the whole time it's pretty much mental damage no matter what? So you have to kind of navigate that in many small ways, which I think is pretty cool, to be honest.
This would be a tough combat.
Yeah, it could be, but it could also be really easy if they manage to face it, having already sifted through these things.
I meant tough for the GM, but yeah.
Oh, tough for the GM. Could be, yeah. But they imply a lot of okay, this creature, if it has to choose between 2 things, it chooses one, it doesn't get both. So I would say even on the extra damage thing, if someone thinks, oh no, it's got claws dripping with acid, I'm like, no, it's got claws dripping with cold, it's only going to be one of the 2. But when you announce that it's doing slashing and cold damage at the same time, that's only going to reinforce the idea now for the other player that it is in fact cold. So does that make it stronger? It's those sorts of questions that are so wild and crazy to me. The last thing on the list is additional spells, which could be both Phantom Pain and Shadow Blast at 6th rank.
I don't know shit about Shadow Blast. What can you tell me about that?
Shadow Blast is a 2-action basic reflex or will, target's choice. Because it's basically a quasi-real substance from the shadow plane into a blast. You basically choose acid, bludgeoning, cold, electricity, fire, force, piercing, slashing, or sonic damage, and choose a 30-foot cone, 15-foot burst within 120 feet, or a 50-foot line. So you get to choose a lot, but so does the target. And then you blast for 5d8 damage of the type you've chosen, but heightened to 6, it would be 68.
This is like a better chromatic ray. That's the fact that you get to choose is amazing.
Awesome. It is really good. So you get to make all these choices, but your target does get to choose reflex or will, so they get to choose their higher of the 2. But assuming this creature is kind of molded around the beliefs of the players, it already knows probably which damage type to attack with, at the very least, if not targeting a weakness, avoiding a resistance of some kind.
Right.
So pretty
Wild.
interesting little
That's
bit
a
there.
wild fucking spell. It's 6th level too.
Yeah.
Heightened
awesome.
1 increases the damage by 1d8. So okay, so it's only heightened 1 time. So it's only 6. I mean, I say it's only 68, but it's only 68 of whatever you're the worst at.
Wow. It's so good. So
Right.
and then, I mean, Phantom Pain's no slouch too. Like it's a non-lethal spell, but it's perfectly in line with this creature because it's illusion and mental. And it has persistent damage, which in and of itself can be deadly, and if failure gives you sickened as well. So it's a scary, and that's a level 1 spell. So we're looking at heightening that, which increases damage by, so statically it's 2d4 and 1d4 persistent. You're increasing that by 2d4 and 1d4 persistent per level. So by level 6, it's that's 10d4 and 5d4. That can be scary. The persistent can be so scary.
I love Phantom Pain.
It's cool.
My TIO wizard had it, and I don't think he used it nearly enough, but it's a fun spell.
Yeah, the thing you have to be careful about is there's so many creatures. There can be a lot of creatures that are immune to mental effects. So you got to be careful about that on the player side of things. And then non-lethal definitely comes into play in certain things as well. Sometimes you really want it, but then sometimes you're surprised by what is in fact immune to non-lethal damage, such as creatures that can only be destroyed, not killed. Yeah.
Yeah. So this was Zori's lesson. Which lesson spell was Phantom Pain?
That's right.
And
okay.
Every time I tried to use it, they were immune to either mental or non-lethal, one of the two.
Yeah.
Real pain in the ass.
Yeah. So you gotta be careful navigating those.
Yeah.
But that's the set block. That's that. It's a pretty crazy basis to go off. There are certain creatures in 2e that come with what's called an effective template of like creating your own. So there are certain like I want to say like not a white or certain undead creatures are a really good example where like this creature died and it turns into this undead creation. But if you want to play with it at different sort of creature levels and giving it or taking it away certain abilities that that comes with templates, this creature does not come with one of those templates. So it sort of assumes that it's going to be too much, I think, to navigate like as you go. So it simplifies in certain ways of like restricting you and like, here's the abilities it can have, pick from them, keep it static. But I think this creature deserves a more template style approach, which I hope we can cover a little bit when we get to the homebrew side of things. That being said, thoughts before I move on?
I have many thoughts. I'm just trying to figure out what I should be leaving for homebrew and what I should be plugging in here. So far, I really like the concept of this creature. I like the abilities. I like the mechanics. I love this urban legend, choose 3 kind of build your own creature approach. But you're right. It is kind of missing something. Like even... So one of the things I really like about 2e is that when you're building a character, you can just flip the page and see a bunch of sample builds. And I think that's what you're getting at with some of those undead creatures. I want to say Revenant is like that, but I can't remember.
Yeah.
And
Grave, I'm pretty sure is one, but yeah.
Yeah. So I think you're right. I think this would really benefit from having, here's an example build. Like here's the kind of shit that we would do, and here's how we would score that appropriately. So like, yes, we're giving it these 2 things, which technically makes it a level 12 encounter. Whereas if you give it 6 of them, it's a level 14 encounter. Something like that would be very helpful to new GMs, which is who this show's targeted at, obviously.
Yeah.
But for old dogs like us, this is just a Mandarin buffet. Mandarin buffet has to be a painfully East Coast Canadian reference, but like an all you can eat buffet of just creature abilities that are they're just wacky. Like you can build some crazy weird shit like this, and it can actually at the end of the day be any creature you want, it seems like. Just
that's
do it
it,
yourself,
there is a certain
of the shadows.
Yeah, there's a certain element of like something we talk about many times is like, is this creature a recurring creature? Could very well be. Is it a big bad? Could also be that. Is it a middle of the road kind of offshoot creature? Also that. Could it be all of them at the same time? Also could be, I think. It's like you could have this thing come in unbelievable, that intro where the big bad comes in and absolutely just messes up a whole small town or something like that in this like countryside, and you're terrified of like the power of it. You could do that because the belief is so strong. But if you go through all these motions, these quests, and all this role play, you can find yourself, and as long as you deliver appropriately to the players, you could find yourself rewarding them with their decisions and their skepticism and their roles of like, oh, you've stripped the creature of that thing you saw it do when you first saw it. You've managed to negate its ability to do this that you saw in the middle of the way. However, you've added this ability as you've gone that makes it a whole new different beast to face. And that is a really cool concept for creature.
Yeah. You know what might be interesting for something like this is like a rollable table.
Yeah.
But as I say that, I realize that that's not how this creature is designed to be used. This creature is designed to be set up, pre-prepped by the GM. You come into a town. Here are the rumors about old Selby's dog. You've already built what that Brainchild looks like, and then it evolves as it
has to change from there. Yeah.
So I like that. It actually kind of makes this a little more approachable as a lower level creature. Just the idea that you come in with these preconceived notions, like, okay, it is a fire imp. It sets fire to things when people aren't looking, and so it's got immunity to fire. It's probably got weakness to water, and those are your two starting abilities. And then you kind of build on it from there. And every day that the PCs don't encounter it, you roll a d6, and then 5 or higher. Okay, so now it's got an immunity, or now it's got tremor sense, or now it can fly, or something like that. Like it can be a really interesting way to beef up an encounter behind the scenes without your PCs ever knowing it.
Yeah,
and then
very
give
much
you an opportunity to dump your purse out on the table afterwards, and like, okay, here's the behind the scenes scene where you do it kind of between 2 or 3 characters. This little fire imp goes to see little Jimmy at night. Yeah.
If you really are familiar with the creature building rules and stuff, like this is like a perfect creature to constantly shift, because there's nothing in the stat block that mentions shifting its core attributes or its bonuses to its skills checks and that sort of thing, and to its saving throws. And that's probably for the reason of keeping it not too complicated. That's probably also the reason why it's not set up for a template like some of the other creatures are, because the template for this would have to be a whole new idea for it to function properly. But if you are, as a GM, comfortable and familiar with the creature building rules, I'm not. I'm so bad at navigating, to be honest. I always ask friends that are for advice on doing that. But if you are, then you can shift the level of this creature very freely and very quickly by adjusting those stats, not just the abilities that are apply or don't apply, that are believed or disregarded, but its actual stats as well. So this could be definitely less than a level 11 creature, and it very much could be more as well.
Sure. Yeah. And if you listeners out there ever want a hand with that, we have some amazing encounter designers in our Discord, unchartednorth.com/Discord.
We really do.
They love talking about this shit, and there are a couple that spring to mind that would just wreck house with an empty template like this. And all you show up to our rules court channel or our PF2E channel, and you're like, okay, here's the town, here's what I want this Brainchild to be like, and you'll get 7 or 8 different answers of people just tearing that shit up. So big shout out to the Discord, and come on over if you're even generally curious. Like, we don't mind lurking. I'm a lurker, but it's a cool place to be.
Speaking of the Discord, this is where I'm going to go into solo rant mode for a while. You're going to have to bear with me here, because
we spun this one up. You can't hear my voice anymore, and it's all Freeman all day.
It's going to be all me. Okay.
Finally got it.
Get ready.
Encounter Freeman.
Encounter me, baby. Here we are. Finally. Okay. So the reason this took so long to figure out to write this episode was because I started on January 26th, 2024 with something really random with no particular plan. And also, we're recording this on March 5th, so it's been over a month. It's been quite a ride. This is going to release quite a bit after that, even. But what I did was I plugged a little creative writing piece into the channel of our patrons on the Discord without any warning, and I just fed them a bit of lore that I made up and created a poll for them to vote on. And I'll walk you through what happened as we go. But I'm going to read the parts that I did. There's 10 of these, of varying length. So bear with me. But on January 26th, I dropped part 1, which reads as such. You are monster hunters, traveling from town to town, eking out a meager existence doing dangerous work. The trouble is, the highest paying gigs are few and far between, and you barely get by quelling the local wolf population instead of hunting a menacing werewolf, or clearing a dead body from a local well instead of facing down a malevolent water spirit. But today, you've heard something quite curious. Actually, you've heard many curious and conflicting things from travelers on the road. There's a small backwater town along a popular north and south trade route that also happens to sit between 2 budding local industries, a quarry and ironworks to the east, and good fishing to the west, where the gossip probably never ceases and superstition is pervasive. You've come across these sorts of towns before, and most just bicker about their neighbors and are careful to put the right effigies in the windows or light the right number of candles on the appropriate holidays. This one has rumors of a killer on the loose, but not just any killer, one with entirely too many attributes, too many abilities, and too many areas of expertise. They are both refined assassin and vengeful apparition, depraved necromancer and acolyte possessed by a demon, a bored fishmonger's wife, and a quarry woman's spurned lover. Any and all of the above and more. There's too much on the eager tongues of traders coming down the trade route to ignore. So I posited a poll. What do you do? Option A was head straight to the town of Middlesrill. Option B was skirt around the town to River's Quarry. And C was to head for the banks of the Pikers Bay. The votes came in at head to the town of Middlesrill, right between these 2 industries. And there was an immediate suspicion that the spurned lover in River's Quarry, Cam suspected, our good friend of the show, Cam, and cast member on Stemming the Tide, suspected that the poll itself had a hidden agenda, such as picking the quarry meant it leaned toward the quarry woman's spurned lover. I didn't plan anything like that, but now it was capable of being part of the story and because of Cam's suspicion. So I was ready to play with it if I had to. That was the only real plan I had for this experiment, as it were. Scott, also a member of Stemming the Tide, picked the quarry because he figured the workers were a more salt of the earth folk. Something very simple and very predictable response from Scott. And longtime fan of the pods, BJP assumed the quarry was dangerous and thought talking to the locals in town was a wiser option. I had to really push everyone early on to give some extra detail to sort of show their thinking for their votes based on the theme of everything. But they were slow on the uptake at the start. I eventually asked Cam to spur them on because Cam actually caught on really quickly to what I was about to do. So not much response, but plenty of votes for the first one. I wrote part 2. It goes as such. You enter the town of Middlesrill, a small but bustling hub for travelers, locals, and the outskirt laborers. It quickly becomes obvious how the town got its name, a small rill or stream that runs through the center of a wide main road bisecting the town. Long-standing tradition is that you do not drive your horses or carts too near the rill, and it is well maintained by the locals with beautiful stones and flower beds along its edges, despite it being small enough for a quick hop over for most anyone. There are a few frequent footbridges to cross the rill, and if you wish to cross the other side with a large and cumbersome load, you actually do need to reach the edge of town first before you can turn around and onto the other side. Currently, however, all of the footbridges are blocked. meaning you need to do the same even if on foot. Why? Because of the many effigies that line the rill this time of year. A rather out of usual season harvest festival has begun as you've arrived, where celebrations across the area can spring up at any time of day and when the feeling strikes. On the eastern side of the rill, you see effigies mostly carved from stone, and on the western side, made with driftwood and old fishing line and nets. And dotted throughout are effigies made from anything that can be spared or is beyond repair. They take human-shaped forms or that of various beasts of the land, sea, or sky. An old shoe serves as a beak. Broken legs of a stool are the legs of a wolf, or a tattered hand fan repurposed as the fin of a sea creature. There appears to be no consistent shape among them. Some are beautifully crafted, most are crude but effective, and all are evocative in their own right. There is a stark difference in the architecture on each side of the rill as well. The western is well suited with simple shacks and structures, having a distinctly and stereotypical shanty look all about. And the eastern side, the buildings are sturdier, if only in appearance, with some obvious stone foundations and even the occasional entire stone structure as if carved from a single rock. And the people milling about town do not seem to have been halted in their daily tasks or celebrations by the rumors that would travel down the road. At any moment, a group of people will start dancing a jig to an old folk tune in a wide circle, halting all traffic for several minutes, and then head back to their stalls or wagons. Or a crowd will gather around a local who fancies themselves an orator, standing on a stone slab or lobster trap, reciting a fanciful story or fairy tale. I then asked with a poll a couple of questions. Where are you headed? What information are you seeking first? And most importantly, the question that was specific to the poll: which side of the rill do you walk down first? The sea side or the stone side? I ended up keeping my poll questions much more simplified than this going forward, but I was really eager to attempt to prompt everyone to start to show their thinking right away. Everyone voted to go to seaside. There was an immediate suspicion from our listener, PJP, who was intrigued by the houses made from a single stone. PJP also thought that perhaps crossing the stream was akin to crossing a barrier into another world, a sort of liminal space or transition, possibly referring to fae or vampires not able to cross running water. I didn't plan any of this, and I think it's right around the time where I actually did ask Cam to spur things on, because I wasn't getting much of a response beyond the unsureness of what I was doing in these prompts. But this was the first step, I think, with PJP and this suspicion that I was really hoping for. It was really fun to see something spring from nothing other than a description of the area. So partly the fault, though, is because I was giving everyone no choice but to vote. So I feel like it was an interesting thing to note that the so-called players of this sort of social experiment didn't know what their freedoms were. So they sort of assumed they had none, which definitely changed very much as we went. But it goes to show you that structure in a game gives you the freedom, gives you more freedom than it limits you, as it gives you an idea of where you can and cannot go. And then that springs more ideas forth. So this was the first real step in encouraging more discussion, even though it was kind of a slow grind. Remember, this was over the course of about a month. Let's get into part 3. Part 3 read like this. Torn between marvels offered from both sides, both obvious and obviously hidden, you've chosen a trip to the seaside. After all, few tell taller tales than those that brave the open and uncaring sea. And like a drop in the ocean, every tale contains a grain of truth within it, or so such superstitious types might have you believe. The shanty buildings of seaside scream function as much as tradition. Designs and architecture vary based on what must be personal and sometimes questionable taste, but all seem to at least serve a basic purpose: repel the worst of the weather or circumvent it at the very least. The flow of seaside is like a school of fish, quick and chaotic from within, but instinctively coordinated when seen and understood from afar. The twisting alleys and nonlinear roads make for expert navigators among the colloquial, adored, and maligned in equal measure sea street urchins. The stilted buildings closer to the water provide shelter for all manner of what the tide or a hurricane may wish to leave behind. And the fish market features each, either, both, and much, much more. Amidst the random breakouts of revelry, you catch a glimpse of the rumor mill at work. Now in the town proper and surrounded on all sides by the currents that power it, there's an anxiety that hides behind the many masks worn by the folk here. And when it flares, well, that's when the dancing and singing and chanting and storytelling begins. You might expect nothing less from a small and superstitious town such as this, especially during festival time, were it not for the palpable effort put into hiding it behind their tradition. The wind carries two distinct things: a typical aromatic ensemble of a fish market, and the whisper of suspicion and fear kept at a low utterance, not because they are harmful to speak aloud, but for fear of evoking evil through mistaken incantation. You find as you are immersed in the hustle of seaside, there are many avenues to hear such whispers more clearly. There is, of course, the classic inn and tavern, the sort of place where many people of every station may come and go throughout most of the day and night. Next is the docks, where from sunup to sundown, stories are exchanged in intervals that match the pace of boats docking and putting to sea, and goods loaded and unloaded. We can't forget the fish market itself, where all manner of monger spends most of the day hawking their catch and wares, but with frequent breaks that inevitably become a vehicle for spreading local news. Or one could simply sit and wait and see if a street side performer will stand tall and regale onlookers with a traditional tale of stone and sea. It's now mid-morning in this random adventure, and this is where the quest, I said, truly begins. So this is poll number 3. What do you do? And I gave the options of hit up a tavern for some local goss, head to the docks and catch the import and export of sailors' tales, walk the fish markets where information is yet another commodity, or sit tight and hope that what you seek appears on the street corner next to you. They all voted to walk the fish markets. I was still not getting much in the way of suspicions, but PJP did mention her experience in a Korean fish market and how it was filled with bored and loud middle-aged women with all of the hot goss. So I chose to use this. We're going to go straight into part 4 now. Part 4 reads, walking the fish markets is all you'd expect and more. Busy, loud, briny, rude, dirty, smelly, fast-paced, sticky-fingered. Of course, there is plenty of creature from the sea hanging about for sale, but many artifacts and treasures have come down the roads, and even some stalls selling stonework from across the rill. Hands on purses, you wander around, weaving through crowds that surround a hawker here and a costermonger there. Come on, take a closer look. I ain't gonna bite as vicious as the beast of rill. Step on up. I can't afford to cover delivery now, can I? Come in close. I'll not rend your flesh, just your fat for me candles. Oh, I'm kidding, darling. I'm kidding. Brighten up. It's gotta stay bright in the darkest of days. Stand up, friends. Step on up. Pitches like this is what you hear. All sorts of these kinds of calls and cries along the winding stalls. And before long, a sudden scuffle breaks out next to you and is resolved as quickly as it started. And you turn to see what's happened. And a market guard has one of the famous C Street urchins by the wrist, dangling a good foot off the ground. Struggling to wrench herself free, the urchin starts flailing and kicking, while the guard gives a laugh. Ha ha ha! All right, you little shit. Settle down. The guard sets the girl down on her feet, but doesn't let go right away. He says, careful, friends. These little curs got fingers as sticky as the middle's real mudman. The urchin suddenly jerks her arm and... Oh, sorry, that's not part of the quote. The urchin suddenly jerks her arm into freedom and takes off into the crowd. And the guard is shocked for a moment, but lets out a hearty guffaw. But they're slippery as a mudslide, too. Keep your peepers peeled and purses close. And he gives all of you a wink and wanders off on his beat again. Now everyone is stepping away from the crowd for a moment, and into a side street you find yourself comforted by the quiet, checking your extra pockets for anything missing, just in case. Now that the noise pollution is significantly less, you catch the sound of a group of old fishwives gathering around and telling a tale. Incurable gossips like these sit in two opposing camps at all times. They can't wait to spread the news of the day to whoever will listen, unless it's someone not openly invited to listen. Eavesdroppers are met with a cold glare, a wicked hot tongue, and, in the worst case, a rusty fishhook to a pretty face. All in all, you've heard and had enough of the fish market, and it is now midday. The poll is, what do you do? Options: head to the docks, find an inn or tavern, abandon Seaside altogether and check out Stoneside, or risk eavesdropping on the fishwives. For what a crazy reason, they decided to eavesdrop. That's what they voted. And suddenly everyone got bold with their ideas and they came out of the woodwork at this part. And it got crazy from here. Right out of the way, right out of it, we got a suspicion from our patron Pavo, who thought there was something suspicious about my description of everyone having extra pockets. I asked Cam, actually, behind the scenes to question this because I could not follow the line of thinking. I just chose it as a flowery words. And Pablo seemed to suspect that the extra pockets might contain weapons. Options offered up for pocket weapons were, by the rest of the patrons, were pocket knife, ring of the ram, pocket sand, horseshoe, packet of salt, roll of thread, and mirror. I really wasn't sure at all where a lot of these were coming from, but now the wheels were turning for everyone. Scott decided to chime in and added wand to the list, knuckle dusters, a taser, and a .38 snub nose. So Scott really was not here to help, but he was helping. He was entertaining at the very least. Although Scott did pick up on the Middlesbrough Mudman that I mentioned within the text there, and started to suspect that maybe it was a type of local boogeyman. PJP then started to suspect that the Beast of Rill was one and the same as the Mudman, mentioning the rend that I had put in there and it being slippery as well as sticky. She then very accurately started to suspect the creature changes based on belief of the people around it. She referenced the show Supernatural, but she wasn't sure what creature was called, and I tried to find it, but I actually couldn't. I couldn't find what the creature was, so I'm still not sure. But she was so close at this point. She didn't stay there forever, though. She also wanted to sort of push the big red button and jump over the rill. She thought it was really going to have an effect in this liminal space idea, and I think she forgot that there was footbridges there to cross the whole time, or that she thought that the actual act of jumping would have a different effect. I'm not really sure where she was at on that, but either way, this was exactly what I was hoping for. I wanted overthinking and suspiciousness because of missing information, because I wanted them to just really just kind of create things on their own. Another patron, Dr. T, thought that the relationship between the market and the urchin, the market guard and the urchin was suspicious. And Pavo added that maybe they run a scam together. PJP didn't consider it and figured that it was just a way for me to drop the Mudman. She was right. I did not consider them having a working scam together. But still, it was another good example of the players overthinking the situation. And Dr. T added that maybe it was just an indicator that I've read Oliver Twist. I have not. So, coinky dink, I guess. But you can see now, suddenly, with as the parts are rolling in, that people are starting to overthink others. The more they start to discuss, the more ideas are coming out of the woodwork. Some of them don't really seem to have much sense, but they're obviously inspired by situations they've been in before, stories they've read, which is really, really fun. I was purposely dropping things like the word rend and the Beast of Rill and the Mudman. I was putting those in there the whole way through in order to inspire these sorts of thoughts. The further we got, the more you can see that the players actually were looking back as we were going over the month, which is really fun. Let's get into part 5. I'll start by asking you to pardon the following stereotype. They say that the wrath of the 9 hells is closely modeled off the results of a woman scorned. Though such a description might not fit every corner of the world, it certainly does for here and now. You've entered a quiet aside from the busy market ways and done your darndest to eavesdrop. But busybodies like these always have busy eyes and keen ears. How else would they acquire the best gossip there is to be had? Oh, sure, you caught a little bit of what they were saying. Snippets like, you can't make a stone float on the sea, And that's what the ritual was all about, I heard, but it all went wrong. And to think she'd take a risk for love, only to end up a. And that's when everyone was caught in their net. As they all turn towards you with the cold glares and hot wicked tongues, screaming thieves, pilferers, robbers, and swooping brooms coming down all around your heads, some of you are stunned, some of you try to shake it off and explain yourselves amidst the flurry of bristles, and someone simply runs. And whoever does the latter finds the market guard standing at the end of the alley, truncheon in hand, with a wicked look on his face. The women keep battering the rest of you with insults, and more join in with their own long-handled sweepers. You'll pay the price for your nosiness. The beast of Rill has a better nose than you. It'll sniff you out for all your sins. And the guard clubs the runner and binds their hands, dragging them off before the rest of you can scramble away. This got kind of fun because I decided the vote will be who ran. And I thought, let's have them all vote against each other. Except they sort of didn't. The options were Gabe, who hadn't really chimed in until now, but is a longtime friend and listener and patron, Pavo, Dr. T, PJP, and Scoot himself. The poll result was Dr. T by unanimous vote because he literally voted for himself. Scoot had put forward the reasonable explanation that Dr. T was the only one that was likely to run away because I didn't mention it, but he was quite vocal about not eavesdropping. He didn't want that one, even though I don't think he actually voted for it, which is kind of odd. He just was like, let's not do that. It's a bad idea. So everyone, so Scott figured he was the first to fuck out of there. Just like, nope, out, not having it. So yeah. My notes there say that Dr. T, he didn't even vote in the previous round. So it was kind of funny that he ended up getting pinned for this one for his comments. It's amazing how all these sort of things fall together sometimes. So I decided to refer to Dr. T as unnamed character in order to stir up some frustration. And as far as I can tell, it worked. Here's part 6. Unnamed character has been scooped up by a corrupt market guard and is missing. The battering the rest of you received by the fishwives has subsided, and they've abandoned you to your embarrassment and under threat from the additional guards that eventually did join the kerfuffle and drop some clubs on a knee or two and the billy on a noggin or 3. It's all but clear that the women in the guard were in on something together, and there's a biscuit's titty you can do about it, as one of the croniest of them put it, a phrasing that's not exactly clear as the message is. But hey, you're in a new town. What do you know about the local colloquialisms? Your pockets were, of course, emptied, no matter how many extra you had. And with a little more information in your repertoire, however vague, and down one companion, however cowardly, you've got more on your plate to deal with than ever before, for better or for worse. But where to start? You've lost a piece of the day now during the recovery of the corrupt brutality. It's now late afternoon. You may figure unnamed character won't be held long and get out on their own, but that could mean being held at least through the night. Maybe you could get them released, but considering corrupt guards and all, what little cash you had left is now in the hands of your recent assailants. A bribe doesn't get you very far without the cash to back it up. If the former is true enough, you could keep seeking out your supposed foe of superstition and find reward in its defeat. That could buy your friends freedom. It's a hard luck moment with a hard choice to make. What do you do? The poll options were try your luck at the docks before the workers finish up for the day. Check out the inn and tavern and rest your weary, beaten joints while taking in the day's gossip. Head to the other side of town and see how fast news travels from one side of the rail to the other. Or whatever it is you're looking for, you need unnamed character for their expertise in arbitrary skill. Find the local barracks and jail. They all voted not only for the last one, but specifically for jailbreak. I referred to Dr. T as unnamed character in the poll, which prompted PJP to ask if they could all name their characters. I sent her 3 shrugging emojis and said nothing, which led her to suspect everyone was amnesiacs. Now I should probably point out that I was saying basically nothing between every one of these posts. I prompted them early on to get their ideas out there, but I was very specifically not answering questions. This was not a play-by-post. There were no roles to be happening. This was all about speculation and suspicion, which definitely exacerbated their frustration. At this point, Tikale, another one of our good patrons, pointed out that he was not included in the previous vote on who got caught. Tikale was offering information, but no real suspicions up until now. So I came up with a new plan because I actually just forgot to put it in the vote. It was a total mistake, but I realized that I could use that. And I messaged him and said, actually, during the kerfuffle with the old ladies, you were pulled away and kidnapped. And now you've been replaced with a faceless stalker. The rest of your party just hasn't noticed. So I charged him with the goal of picking up strong things to believe in this creature, in this that we all know is a brainchild, and making the others believe it more astutely, more strongly, but trying to make them unprepared for the battle if possible. He effectively was now a faceless stalker who worshipped this ever-changing creature. Tikale was all about it. He started to wildly speculate that the ritual vaguely mentioned what may have gone wrong was something in the sacrificing of something, the killing of something, and it resulted in a now nondescript monstrous creature. He also said that he thought that the guards were part of a slave operation, that Dr. T's unnamed character was going to be sold off. Part of his suspicion was how the fishwives had treated them. PJP backed this suspicion with suspicions of the fishwives, and they both latched on to the mention of the lover from part 1 and the ritual, PJP even loosely suggesting some hag territory, which I was really, really quite happy with. Beautiful, chef's kiss. And Tikale really started finding reasons to not save Dr. T. Everyone was voting for it. This was all during the voting process, and he was going out of his way to be like, maybe we shouldn't. Mostly, he was gearing towards being able to get the job of a monster killing done without wasting time or continuing to get on the bad side of the town, which they felt like maybe they had. Pavo mentioned that they weren't salaried employees or anything, and that and then he called the town the real monster. So suspicions were so high based on events of a few NPCs, as it were, and suddenly the whole town was evil. Things were getting carried away for sure. PJP jokingly asked if they were so desperate for work that they maybe have dreamed up the whole thing, which is too good. And Pablo said that that would be a little too mean of me to do that. I think what I was doing was meaner, actually. this whole experiment. The timing of the Amalgamite episode. Here's an interesting one. PJP suspected that was the creature we were looking for. So Amalgamite had come out around the time this was going, and she was suspecting this whole time that maybe that was the creature we're looking for. But then she was like, oh, but there's no mention of teleportation, no teleportation circle as a ritual, however, blah, 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 blah. There was nothing to sort of support it, but she was still suspicious nonetheless. A fun little tidbit is that I actually forbade Dr. T from engaging in this section while he was away from the party, having been captured by the guard. And so I told him not to speak at all, but they sent a message in Morse code in the Discord, which translated to "am separated from the party." So he just started teasing everyone, which was fun. For some reason, everyone decided that Dr. T was the healer. They were going down that route, trying to give themselves some structure and some responsibilities, which I think fed into why we have to save him. We have to go to the town, the barracks for the jailbreak. And PJP was really gunning for, and I quote, violence and civil disobedience, including getting bombs and trying to pull the jail bars off with a horse cart and ropes. And even better, according to her, starting a good old-fashioned riot. She was really getting into the anarchy. And at some point, Pablo made a Mulan song reference and joke. BJP thought it was obvious. And then Duncan from Something of Time finally chimed in and admitted he was thoroughly ashamed for having never seen the film. You can see how things got carried away and off topic, but people were now so engaged this time. What sucks is that I suddenly was very busy at work around now. I suddenly had very little time to work on this, and I was trying to piecemeal things in really quickly and read things as they were coming. I found myself unable to even read as people were posting. I had to like stop and set time aside to read it in chunks. So work got crazy for me. I was struggling to keep track of what was going on, but I was able to get in a side conversation with Dr. T about what was happening during their incarceration of their unnamed character. So the next part, probably the longest part, ended up being the conversation that I had with Dr. T, and I posted it to everyone. And he goes like this. I said, you aren't with the party anymore, but you're in prison, which means you are in a cell with other people, next to cells with other people. You're a bit roughed up, but conscious, and there's no shortage of ruffians sharing this living space. Everyone's snipping at each other or swapping outrageous stories as to why, how, and where they were caught and cuffed. And as you gather your composure and find yourself in a cell with a couple others, and the rest of the cells are far enough apart that the only danger is within one's own, the place is dimly lit by the iron barred windows that appear to be around ground level above your head. You catch a conversation that slowly begins to involve most and eventually all of the prisoners here, and all of their attention anyway, if not their peace. It starts with a ruffian saying, all I'm saying is it's good luck to new guys in here. That's nearly before too late. A thief responds with, what are you talking about? It's crowded enough, and they ain't even cleaned the mud buckets for days. A quack of a doctor says, oh, you idiot. 'Cause it's harvest, and there's more dangerous mud than those buckets. The ruffian says, exactly. We got just the right amount to protect us come sundown. The thief says, and what number would that be? The ruffian, a bit confused. Suddenly, a banker in the jail speaks up. 13. And he's right. It's the magic number, as they say. 13 is the number the beast loves most. Without it, it flies into a rage. The thief, rolling his eyes, says, absolutely none of that makes sense. How can a beast love a number? And where does it even find it? It must be in a rage all the time without one. You're all fools for even believing in such nonsense. The quack says, oh yeah? Well, we're supposed to trust logical line of thinking of a common cut purse? The conversation breaks out into an argument among the cells, and you sit in a corner with a dull ache all over. This is where I let Dr. T respond. First, he wanted to know if he was arrested or roughed up, or did he just wake up in hazy memory, how many days had passed, or if everyone was local or from the neighboring areas. I mentioned that he was arrested, roughed up, never knocked out, overpowered, and effectively kidnapped. It's been the same day. It's now late afternoon, and you would assume that most of the prisoners call Seaside their home, and it's possible that some work in Stoneside, or at least once lived there. He asks if he had heard of the beast before it's mentioned, and I said only from the local gossip so far, usually referred to as the beast of Rill. He asks, does anything there mentioning ring a bell, like the harvest and the numbers? And I said, well, the harvest, it was obvious when you came in. It was obvious, but the number they're talking about, this whatever, is totally new to you. So he says, I want to chime in and say, hey, I was sent here to hunt down monsters and beasts. To do this, me and my affiliates need some information, if you can provide. So I go back to the characters, and the banker says, ooh, a fancy monster hunter, are you? And the quack says, you don't hunt, though this one, sweet cheeks, it hunts you. And the ruffian says, yeah, and it won't if you stay here. Look around you. There's 14 of us now. It's as scared of things in 14s. The thief rolls his eyes and says, I thought you said it was 13. You look around to do a head count, and sure enough, there are 14 people in the cells. You are the 14th member added, Dr. T. And the banker starts to count himself, and once he realizes that they overshot their own count, his eyes widen with panic. So Dr. T says, I hold my hands up. Look, I'm willing to leave to shore up the numbers. I'm also willing to kill a hunter. It's what me and my crew do, but I need more info than a banker that can't count and a thief that can. It's very insulting. Uh, he says, what can you tell me about this monster? Is it corporeal, bestial? Does it fly? Is it tied to a harvest of celebration of a deity? He's asking very specific questions now. And the response is the banker going, realizing that his count is wrong, he just starts to panic and says, oh no, we're screwed. The ruffian says, enough with your questions. Who put you in charge anyhow? And the quack says, the beast isn't any of these things, and it's all of them. It's whatever it needs to get you. You think these bars or even these walls can stop it? The thief, rolling his eyes again, says, oh, and the number 13 makes it powerless. Yeah, okay, wonderful. Just sarcastic as all hell, the whole situation. And the ruffian says, I said, shut it, all of you. This one made us 14. I can make us 13 again. The ruffian steps forward. He's a big and tough and mean man. You look around desperately as all eyes are on you. They're all wondering if your death will keep them safe. Even the unbelieving thief doesn't look like they are about to take a chance. And you spot a small, high window with bars in it, people passing by along the market constantly. No one outside is paying attention to the little window below, but it's a ground level for them, so why would they? You're going to need to cause an awful lot of ruckus if you want anyone to look this way, or find a way to turn this crowd on someone else. Dr. T responds with, why does 13 hold this beast at bay? It could be anything if it needs to get you hold on. And he said, it could be anything if it needs to get you. Why would a group stop it? Surely a group of bakers dozen is capable of explanation within their superstitions. My dad always told me it was bad luck to be superstitious. You better give me a reason to be afraid of before this big gentleman right here resorts to violence over a simple stranger. He says, as the big guy approaches, I want to study his walk, which foot starts with in which direction, which hand he favors, possible limp, scars from previous injuries. He's turned into investigator mode here. He says, I've never claimed to be in charge, nor do I wish to be. I just want to kill this creature and be on my way. So I respond with the thief perking up at the lines of logic that Dr. T has offered. There's an appreciation in his gaze, but still he shakes his head with a smirk. He realizes already what dawns on you now. Logic and reason are not what whips people up into a panic frenzy, nor does it calm them down. They aren't interested in explaining themselves or answering your questions, just interested in making the right number fit. They're unreasonable. And self-preservation mode is above all. They've entered a mob mentality. Except the thief who speaks up. I doubt any of them were even born with the intelligence to answer you sensibly, friend. Not even the wisest father or the kindest mother could have gotten through this one. He points at the ruffian, who then turns on his heel to face the thief. You check his gait and balance within the sudden shift. He's a big one, built for quick and unerring brutality, but he's not much for stability on his feet, nor endurance in a prolonged scuffle. Quick and ruthless is his game, and his supportive audience, a complete lack of fear of you and terrified as a babe of the beast, is what is in his edge. The thief has regret written all over his face. He's made himself a secondary target now, and maybe that's your edge, you and the thief's anyway. Dr. T eagerly says, you seem obsessed with preserving the number. I'm more than happy to leave. I'm sure this big man is more than capable of such a feat, given that these bars don't provide safety, as you say. Maybe the odd one out here isn't the one that was added, but the one that doesn't fit in the crowd, one that isn't part of the esteemed group. It seems only one of you is in these cages as guilty of a crime. One of you seems to be capable of counting and another doesn't. One of you isn't all up there while the others see reason. One of you is physically present while the rest seem unremarkable. He says, I want to make a point of pointing out each individual and punctuating my words and pointing them out and, and making the others look at them. It's so mean. I love it. He says, or maybe if you're wrong about your own safety, you're just prey in a cage, waiting for death because you sought safety in number. And believe you me, a beast, monster, creature, or humanoid being always goes for the biggest throat first, especially one that can't keep his balance. And he says, I want to kick the back of the knee of this ruffian, not hard, not to cause injury, but enough for him to go to one knee to touch the floor, even just for a moment. This is the closest I ever got in this whole thing to letting people or letting someone take specific actions. And I think it was worth it because when I let all this out to the other players, it got them all riled up. I responded with, as you start and continue through your speech, you see all but the thief grow in rage and eagerness to see you dead. But as soon as you kick the ruffian behind the knee, the thief lunges with incredible speed, drawing a hidden shank and plunging into the ruffian's chest. And just as he does, his facade falls away to reveal strange humanoid shape nearly devoid of features. It seems almost formed of clay or mud, and it gasps a hoarse, dying cry. The thief gives you a nod and says, good work. Now their 13 is not but 12. And the rest of the prisoners shed their disguises and begin to scream and shake and roar. And all of them, save the thief, are faceless stalkers. And you've created a rather appropriate ruckus. Adding on to this for the other players, after I'd sent all of this back and forth between me and Dr. T, I said, you voted to bust out Dr. T. And when you reach the small ramshackle prison, you see a small crowd gathered around one side of the building. No windows or doors are visible on this side, but the crowd seems to be looking down and pointing toward the ground. As you push your way through, you see a low foot-level window previously described. Your pal and a random ragamuffin about to go toe-to-toe with a slew of monsters within. Poll number 7. What do you do? Option A is bust down the front door of the jail. Option B is shove your way through the crowd and try the window. Option C is call to the gathered citizens for help. Or D, fuck this noise, abandon Dr. T altogether and regroup. They, of course, chose option B with a swing vote from Dr. T himself to shove their way through the crowd and see what they can do with the window. There were no real suspicions popping up at this point. Work really got away from me as well. I was so busy. And so the current vote was really about a plan of action. But there was some seriously hilarious banter going on as they were discussing what to do. There were mentions of references to Spy Kids 3. Never seen it. But Scoot was somehow accused of being a corrupt coal miner, but like an employee and not a shareholder, and somehow still the evil one. I don't even know how that came up. He'd also been accused of having paid his own way onto the podcast, and BJP was jealous. I think we owe her like a game or a one shot or something. But there was at least one action idea from PJP, who was really digging into how much gear they had lost in the Fishwives kerfuffle, toying with wondering if she still had her material components for spells, and then suddenly named herself the druid of the party. So again, they were getting to creating their own structures, so they have more things to work on. And again, I was saying absolutely nothing. I really want to put some emphasis on the fact that they thought they lost their gear. I never, ever mentioned they lost their gear. They just thought they did. So part 7, long one, bear with me. We're not too far from done. Part 8. As you come away through to the other side of the crowd and you see your companion in danger, so too do instincts turn to the only means of escape, however unlikely. He looks through the small barred window and sees you all gazing down on the scene of monstrosities about to lunge. The quick thinking and swing vote, he screams, "Run, we're all gonna die!" And the crowd's curious anxiety quickly turns to terror and fear. A sudden panic scream from within the crowd, and they begin to scramble and run away. And you find yourselves with a little more literal wiggle room to face the obstacle before you. With fewer casualties at risk, one of your crew, PJP, I totally made it PJP because of her idea, launches a fire spell beyond the small bars to create a new panic inside. And the faceless stalkers are singed and burned and immolated in varying degrees, shrieking and flailing. And suddenly the thief grabs a hold of your healer, which is unnamed character / Dr. T, and bamfs out of the room into the street, translocating both of them to safety. The thief gives you a small nod and a wink and takes off running with the sudden immediate opportunity to do so. Within a couple of breaths, the sounds of an alarm bell begins to sound out from the jail, and the dispersing crowd is about to be countered with a flood of paid authorities. And you are left with the sounds of footsteps speeding away in all directions, the unsettling sound of cackling and crackling within the jail as the monsters burn. The workday is over, and it's officially the start of evening. The next poll is, what do you do? Sit tight and explain yourselves. You never know what further knowledge lies within those jail cells. Option B is get the fuck out and hide in a tavern for now. They are probably plenty crowded by now. Option C is get the fuck out and hit the docks. Maybe someone is left around, but fuck it. Maybe you just want to charter passage out of here at this point. And option D is maybe now is a good time to actually get the fuck out of Seaside and see if Stoneside is a more reasonable place. Poll results, option B was what was chosen. Hide in a tavern for now. There are probably plenty of crowd in there. Immediately there was a disagreement where Pavo wanted to sit tight to cause in case their gear was retrievable. they latched on hard. I even reminded them of this, that their pockets and their extra pockets were picked clean, but I never said anything about gear. And they thought extra pockets meant, remember I said, they thought they meant, pockets for weapons or something, but I don't know where they got it. They latched on to this idea and never let it go. Scott disagreed with sticking around, regardless of the gear, because, and I quote, I ain't talking to no cops. Ever the helpful man. So just thought that was funny. There was another action idea from PJP who wanted to maybe track down the thief that had just suddenly aided them, hoping that maybe they were also in the tavern. So this justified her vote for the tavern. Pavo also suggested splitting the party to find the gear and gather more gossip, but he was promptly shut down because you don't split the party. Tikale gently suggested maybe they don't even want to finish the quest. Doing his job as the now secret agent. Not getting too far with it, though. Tikale did refer to the beast, and Dr. T questioned whether or not it even is a beast given the strange faceless stalker connection. Pavo further claimed the town itself was the real beast. More about the town. The above suspicion, this previous one had PGP asking all kinds of questions, and good questions. Why were there faceless stalkers at all? Is the whole town faceless stalkers? Do the guards specialize in capturing them? Why was the one guy not a stalker? Does that mean he's innocent as far as the thief goes? Or is he somehow worse? I can tell you right now, I was making this up as I went. I had no plan. I had no justification for why the whole jail was filled with faceless stalkers, other than maybe they worship this creature, which I fed to Tikale, and some arbitrary superstition of the number 13. PGP also started making notes in a document at this point, going back on all the things that we had done and trying to navigate what the hell is happening. And not only do I think we need to give her a one shot, maybe we need to get her a microphone and get her on the podcast. She started to reflect back on the whole Harvest Festival and the creepy the whole thing was just kind of creepy, especially the random breakouts of revelry connected to the strange air of anxiety throughout the whole town. Scoot mentioned the dancing plague of 1518, which is something I hadn't thought of, but I'm kind of, I guess maybe my subconscious remembered that somewhere. It's if you don't know anything about that, definitely look it up. It's a wild little thing, a true thing in history. A PJP also pointed out the line about the beast being able to sniff out your sins. And at this point, to be honest, I completely forgot I even wrote that. That would just be putting in little tiny things for them to latch onto. And then there was a re-mention of my line, whispers of suspicion and fear kept at a low utterance, not because they are harmful to speak aloud, but for fear of evoking evil through mistaken incantation. This had PJP very unnerved, it would seem. Again, I was just throwing shit out there. Let's go to part 9. Nearly done, friends. You've sought refuge from alarms, guards, and aberrant dangers. What better place to lay low than among the taller and louder heads of a tavern filled with workers ready to drink their fill, discuss the day's labor, and otherwise avoid the things pitted in their stomachs and firmly pinned to the back of their minds? Doing your best to track down the thief that came to your aid based on some subtle inquiries and a keen, wary eye of your surroundings, you suspect they entered the very oddly named establishment, the Grey Fontanelle. No one picked up on this. I hope someone does. It is plenty crowded with a wide range of backgrounds, so-called unsavory types by the looks in their eyes, good honest workaday roustabouts by their generous mirth, and all manner of below, above, and between by their clothes, their posture, their coin purses, and their conversation. Quickly ducking into the crowd, the game of musical chairs is played all around you as people come and go to and from bar and street. It takes little time to sneak into the seats of a shared table to gather yourselves and perhaps gather information. With empty pockets, however, a necessary nerve-calming drink is not exactly at your fingertips. However, there are many openings and lively chats that are going round for round as they spin their yarns, and plenty of drunks flashing coin and looking for someone to annoy with their stupors, often willing to pay for a round to make it happen, though you see few accept this transaction more than once. You've spotted your friend in thievery, or sorry, you have not spotted your friend in thievery just yet, if they're even here at all. But there is a moment of reprieve in here, and gossip more plentiful and freely given than any part of your day so far. It is now dusk. What do? Option A was casually join a group of chinwaggers, find yourself a free pint or two, and try to glean anything to point you in the right direction, or any direction at all. Option B was take on an inviting posture for one of the drunks, allow them to sit and buy around and see what they've gathered and around the room for themselves. Option C was sit tight, drinkless, and keep your eyes peeled for the thief and your ears open to the peals of rumor all around you. And option D, you've had your breather and maybe things have settled down outside, head out of the tavern and elsewhere in seaside, perhaps. And a fifth option, though you can't be sure when things have calmed down, maybe it's worth the risk to head to Stoneside before the day is gone. The result was option A, join the Chinwaggers. PJP was actually really keen on having some free ale. So this definitely inspired her vote, I think. Also continuing to try to find a thief. So she wanted to stay within the inn. Though she suspected that they were the type to be found rather than, or to find you rather than to be found, that is. Pava was all about blending with a drink as well. He suspected I was steering them towards Stoneside, though I'm not quite sure why now. I had always basically made an option when the options were about moving from one location to another. He seemed to suspect me at this point, and I'm not quite sure why, but I love it. Takale wanted to wait to see if someone came to the group, referencing being beaten up by a group of old ladies, so not keen to push forward to strangers. And there was another reference to all their gear being stolen by Pavo again, and I never said it. I never said it happened. So suddenly this was becoming this thing that people just believed, and I hope that becomes part of the creature as I finish this and round this up. Okay. Part 10, final one. I hope you're not bored by now. Nudging your way into a group for a chit chat is not terribly difficult, but getting word in edgewise is a whole different story. You hear tale after story and are the butt of jokes and bystander of wisecracks and witness insults and cajolery, both veiled and bold-faced, but nary a person speaks a word of the so-called beast Arill, or even the Mudman. And in the oddest manner, no one properly engages you. Sure, you find yourself in hand around the handle of a mug or two when the rounds come along, but it's as if you were noticed, but not quite acknowledged. It's too little too late when you yourselves notice and then acknowledge that the words in the room have begun to escape you. You cannot discern a phrase, let alone a turning of one, not a word or even a garbled string of letters. Instead, there was a dull and deafening murmuring all around, and no one will look at you. Why could that be? You may wonder. Is it impossible incantation? Is it something in your drink? Is it unseen magic overloading your senses? Is it all of the above and more? Everyone in the room turns suddenly, and their murmurs audibly swoop with them. All face one direction, and they part from each other to make a path that leads to the thief. Only it's not a thief, it's something else entirely. It is singular and horrible and staring at you, ready. It can only be your quarry. It can only be what you seek, however much you may now wish you hadn't. There is no poll this time. There is no vote. What do you see? What does your gut tell you it will do? How will it do it to you? What, if you could have prepared better, would you have readied to face it? Tell me everything you believe. You must come to some common ground. Like a good team, you are different parts of the same whole. So too must this creature be, mustn't it? Oh, and by the way, you didn't guess it. It's midnight. PJP immediately suspects midnight being the monster itself, like a personification of death, and she already calls herself out and says it's she blames it on her quote JRPG brain rot. It being midnight and the creature now revealed also spurred her though back to the very original thought she had about a liminal space. She continues to suspect the creature had led them by the nose all day, and that started to kind of anger her a bit. In reality, as I was writing this and improvising it, I had it more follow them and then kind of show itself in the thief, though I never specified whether or not they were separate entities. I didn't really have a plan for it. But of course, it eventually reveals itself. It wasn't exactly leading them by the nose. I was leading them sort of by the nose. Pavo insisted it's the beast of Rill that they see, and he gave the vague setup of the party after all of their conversation. Obviously I didn't list everything here. There was so much going on, but there was effectively meant to be a caster, which I think is the druid with PJP, a healer, which is Dr. T's unnamed character, a fighter, and a thief. And he himself at one point was named the FNG, which is fucking new guy. And he considers himself replaceable. So he tries to volunteer himself to walk up to the creature and tell it to shove off, thinking that the creature feared the party. In fact, he said it's obvious that the creature fears the party. Not sure where that came from. Dr. T was suspecting that the entire town was monsters, a la Wicker Man 1973, which led to suspicions that there was a D&D style mind control of some kind happening. Pavo further suggested the beast runs the town and that the good thief, quote unquote, was its nemesis. If the beast was able to have them captured, it could have had them killed too, but it didn't or couldn't. This seems to be the root of Pavo's suspicion that the beast fears them. PJP was intrigued by the mind control idea, but countered with, why then are the people in the town afraid of the creature? Maybe the mind control is limited in its capacity. But what she then focused on was that the creature was obviously messing with their senses, which I put a heavy emphasis on at the last section. She also questioned why it hadn't killed them already. Does it only come out at midnight? Has something been stopping it? Does it actually want to kill them? Pavo continued to insist it's afraid of them and their power. It must be. Dr. T supported the idea of the entire town being monsters and that it could only come out at midnight on this specific day, which is why the entire town was scared. Tikale chimed in, attempting to influence the decisions of the rest like a good little minion of deceit. He suggested that the creature feasts on fear and that it creates uncertainty through magic or alchemy. It brings your wildest fears to life, has isolated the group and is manipulating their senses, and is forcing the group to focus on it instead of everything else around them. PGB thought it was an interesting theory overall and bit down on it, agreed that it's probably very true, like pretty much right away. Tikale further suggested it had multiple forms, one with vicious fangs and teeth, and the other to hide in plain sight, such as being the thief. BJP was still unsure it was truly the thief at all, and suspect that it may be just a ruse here and now. This is because she didn't think the face of stalkers would attack the BBEG, aka the thief, that they worship inside the prison. She then suggested the monster could maybe possess the thief's body. Pablo still insisted the beast is scared. He kept insisting the beast is scared of them, and that's why it's imitating the thief. Takali said the fear makes the brain taste yummy. It just made me laugh. Dr. T was at this point confused about who fears who, because there was no consensus. He straight up accused PJP for having fallen for the monster, which I have no idea why. Also said that they couldn't rule out that she might actually be the monster, or the FNG, aka Pavo, could be. Then they jokingly roleplayed Pavo betraying them for a little bit, which was a good laugh. Pavo called for Scott's opinion because they were all over the place, which Scott just responded with calling himself dumb and saying he has no idea. But he then supported Takala's idea of the monster feeding on fear, saying a monster that feeds on fear would keep a town full of monsters. Scott's got his little profound moments. I just love him for it. PJP responded with the confusion of having fallen for it. I don't blame her. I have no idea where they came from. Then she supported the idea that the creature existed to sow fear and confusion. Scoot and PJP further went into possession and or change shape options. There was some casual mention of my cruelty for having done all of this to them. Dr. T wondered if its shape or form might appear different to each individual. PJP and Takale both locked into shapeshifting, controlling the population through fear. Takale insisting it has a ferocious true form to justify the monster aspects of its nature. After all of this, PJP is still stuck on the liminality idea at midnight as well, and Pavo is still stuck on the creature fearing the party. Takale does not support it being afraid. After all they were beaten up by a group of old ladies and taken by the town guard, Pavo counters with the old ladies actually possibly being a witch coven, hags everyone, and suggests the party was easy on the guards, even though they were being, harried in all directions. Dr. T recalls the obsession with the number 13 again, all of a sudden. At this point, it's literally been like a week and a half or more, maybe 2 weeks since that was mentioned. Scoot decides to not help by saying he reaches into a pocket plane to pull out a bunch of AR-15s to put the thing down, and I quote, in a hail of lead and smoking casings. This is where I finally cut them all off. It was just roundabout and not going too far in any particular direction, but there were a few things that they agreed upon, and I mentioned them. The majority seemed to agree the creature had the following features: shape-shifting and possession abilities, control through fear and confusion, increased strength through fear and confusion, power over senses, possibly through illusion magic. Other features that were considered and not overtly shut down were ferocious beast-like claws and fangs, and strength and or weakness due to a liminal nature. And other suspicions that sort of floated around the creature but were not specifically attributed to it, that were definitely inspirations. One of many inspirations for what I was writing as I was going was that the entire town could either be thralls or worshippers. The old ladies were maybe a coven, and something number 13. Ultimately, that's when my cruelty came in at its best, because I told them we are done. There are no results for the social experiment, and that they have to wait for this episode to drop for them to see what actually happens. So again, we started this January 26, 2024. I finished it. I finished the morning of us recording, March 5th. It's been quite a ride. My voice is now quite hoarse after going through all of this. We'll take a hidden break, but it'll be quick for you as we get into Homebrew, and we are going to bring in a special guest for the Homebrew so that we can discuss what the hell happened and what we can do with this creature with that information. Homebrew time. Homebrew, look who's here, everybody. It is none other than Cam the Legendary.
Hey.
Oh, that setup at the beginning finally paid off. I was waiting for it.
Did you get it?
Yeah.
The man, the myth,
the myth, the legendary. Yeah. Yeah. Saw you guys in the Discord. Thought I'd pop in.
The only way I would ever call you is the man, James. Just so you know, just for a plug like that.
I mean, I'm probably the most masculine of the three of us, but that's not exactly a high bar.
Yeah, but it's just not a name I attribute to you. Hey, James is the man, you know?
No, I'm kind of glad. It feels like I should be part of the patriarchy, and that's kind of not my bag.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Cam, thanks for joining us. You caught on to what I was doing pretty early in that social experiment. And I knew you would be one of the best people to bring in here to explore this creature in a homebrew sense. I have lots of notes here of what could have been taken from the suspicions along the way. I think mostly our creature maybe is formed by the strongest of the things at the end, but I have some really cool ideas. But I want to know what you and James both think of that social experiment and where you think it went and how it can form this creature. I hope you took notes. Just tell me what you think.
Before we dig into it, can I get you to define liminal for me?
That is a good question. Liminal.
Let me Google this real quick.
Yeah, occupying a position at or on both sides of a boundary or threshold.
Okay.
Yeah, so something that sort of I guess kind of belongs on both sides of something, but definitely in PJP's case, it's like a very otherworldly or different planar kind of liminal use of the word liminal.
Yeah. So people that'll come out of comas will describe it as a liminal experience, like not quite alive, not quite dead.
Okay.
Somewhere in between, somewhere on both sides.
So, since you're the honored guest there, Cam, do you want to take first crack, or do you want?
Sure,
I'll take hot seat.
I'll take first crack. The wildest thing about the social experiment, and I think part of the reason that I saw it immediately is because this is kind of how I GM sometimes, and just here's a few things and then watch what my players run with. And it's always hilarious to me watching how quickly it devolves into shitty telephone. And just they will immediately latch onto an idea. Yeah, just one person will be like, our weapons are gone. It's like, I never said that. But yes, now they are. Bitch. Yeah. And so watching them there's too many pockets, just little extraneous details, and it's part of the player GM contract, right? So that you don't spend, forever searching every 5 foot square. You're and you see some unusual books over here on the shelf. I'm going to go look at those books. And so the players are literally trained, through playing to follow those clues. But sometimes it's just a throwaway thing, or they read too much into it, or, and so,
always so much reading into it.
Yeah. I think that if I had done the social experiment a little bit more, I would have had the monster be a little bit more active in its form gathering, and using things like ghost sound to, create scratches on the wall so that they think it has a slashing attack.
Right.
And using this might be a good space for you to describe the premise of this experiment, Freeman, just so the listeners know why you did this, because I don't think you got into that at the top.
There was just no plan. It was a spur of the moment. I think it was at work I had a brief moment. I was trying to decide what creature I was going to do next. I knew Brainchild was on my list, and I very quickly perused its stat block. I didn't even look at ghost sound. I just went, oh, right, this thing changes abilities based on superstition and belief. I'm gonna try and include the patrons here, give them a little extra flavor for supporting us. And I just threw something out with no plan whatsoever. And it was my whole thing was, it was actually, I kind of purposely didn't use all of the things in the stat block. I wanted both the story and the creature to evolve from all other suspicions. So when they mentioned this thing, I was like, oh, I can use that. like PJP's Korean market fishwives. I was like, I'm going to put that in the story. I wanted things like that to happen the whole way. So I at some point I actually just stopped looking at the stat block. I think I perused it and I never looked at it again until today of recording, when I went through the details. So I was trying to keep it way more freeform than normal, just for the fun experimentation of it. And I really didn't want to bury the lead. I didn't want it to become obvious, and I didn't want to play by post feeling. I wanted it to be frustratingly confusing. And it was.
Mission accomplished. Yeah.
Yeah. It was fun. It was an experiment.
I definitely think that with the monster that you created through this sort of posting atmosphere on Discord, the weakness to anything with fear or the intimidate trait, having demoralize actually do like 2d6 damage plus the 10 weakness, like having any fear spells, like just scaling it with that, like having it act as almost a phantasmal killer would be the first place I'd go, especially with like how much they hung on that. But if it's also it feeds off of fear, like I'm definitely giving it frightful presence.
Yeah, for sure.
And yeah, like this thing is mechanically a menace. Like there's a strong chance that you kill a fighter with Phantasmal Killer if they're like level 9. Like if this is a solo encounter and they're +2 party level, like there is a, let's see, they need 16 or 17 to succeed. And so on a 6, they're critically failing and go into that fortitude save, and then they probably have a 50-50 to die.
Right. Because the critical failure for a Phantasmal Killer does have incapacitation, specifically that degree of success or failure.
What's up?
So it does, yeah. It's
but
not
they're
listed
level
in the
9,
so yeah.
And
But it's still,
it's a rank 5 spell, so that incapacitation doesn't kick.
Oh, it doesn't. Yeah, there you go. Okay, so
yeah, if they're level 10, yes, but if they're level 9, it does not kick.
Yeah, so terrifying creature. Yeah, that's a good call. It could kill the fighter in a one fell swoop. That would be wild.
Yeah,
that's just stock standard.
Yeah, but I think that definitely based on like where it is, like in a sea town, like I would also just give it like some fog spells and things like that to be able to move around.
Okay,
I would definitely, just like small, like more utility spells rather than damaging spells, because the point that I would be trying to drive home with this creature is purely to just like fuck with the players. And when you threw in the Faceless Stalkers, you created a red herring. And I don't know if you did it intentionally or not, but you did, because abelisks work with red herrings and they're known for mind control as well. And so that was beautiful. Excellent. Continue that shit.
Yeah. Yeah, it was definitely, but I in my head canon, the Faceless Stalkers were, they were not slaves to an aboleth or an Algol master. They were kind of a departure, and they had decided for themselves that this thing was worth worshiping, because they realized for some reason that it had the ability to change just like they do. They had this ability to be manipulated, and they wanted to manipulate it into something that was worth worshiping, was kind of the idea I had for their heads.
Oh, like a little cult. That's cool.
Yeah, even though it doesn't come through in what I wrote, like that's where the motivation was for me, is that they want to create something that's worth worshiping.
Yeah, especially if you're like doing it in a town like Sandpoint or something, like it's a more permanent town where the party is going to be spending time at. Like you can definitely like amp that up even more and like really dive into that. But this definitely doesn't feel like a one session creature. This feels like something that you kind of bear the lead on. They might go off an adventure, but like this should be a town that they're coming back to, that you create this at. And there should even be like rumors of a serial killer sorcerer that was running around like 100 years ago, and that phantasmal killer, like just to give them a little bit of a help. But also I think it'd be fun with recall knowledge. If they critically fail, they accidentally do create another thing that they now believe.
Oh,
that is either a misinformation or
misinformation.
You've given them a new resistance now, or you've given them a fake weakness.
Which is a pro secret check, strategy, right? Like, we play pretty fast and loose with it, because it can be a bit of a stick in the mud sometimes. But yeah, that's a secret check critical failure. It's perfect for this creature. I did not think of that. That's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, that's where I'm at right now. But leaning more into like the stuff that happened in the not a play by post.
Play by poll.
Play by poll.
There you go.
Yeah.
Perfect. I think that I would give it weakness. What was the primary weapon? It wasn't, I guess, piercing, because AR-15s was the joke, right? But no, like a shiv. Yeah, just like I think that's where the weakness would go, would be piercing. It just seemed to be the way that like most of the weapons they were talking about to affect it.
Right.
Or I guess that's the only one that really like springs to mind. And I don't know that they really talked about immunity, but I would probably go maybe I don't think magic schools exist anymore, right?
They don't. Yeah, I did bring it up earlier. Kind of wondering if this creature is going to be featured in the Monster Core early on or not, because of that particular thing. Because it's now sort of, as a remaster, missing one option that it can in fact be immune to. So
Yeah.
is there something else that it could be immune to? It makes me wonder. Not that it necessarily has to be there. A damage type or a condition is usually powerful enough, but an entire magic school is actually quite powerful.
Yeah.
Such as being immune to necromancy or something.
Well,
like
I mean,
that,
it is immune to necromancy,
listed.
so you add evocation into that, and then blasting spells are out the window.
And then suddenly, you're at a pretty incredible disadvantage.
There are ways around that, though. Like if you wanted to lean into that fog, you could make it immune to reflex saves. So any spell that requires a reflex save, it just goes right through.
Right.
Okay.
I mean, that's definitely not listed as an option.
Yeah.
Yeah, but which would make it pretty powerful. But I love the idea.
Yeah.
Which makes me want to talk about homebrew ideas. Is like, so we could build this creature, easily enough with the stat block and it's the suggestions that it has. But like, what about homebrew creature abilities, or rather just like different creature abilities of that could be well applied to this creature? Things that come to mind are like you talked about the fear thing, Cam, and the frightened condition. I kind of loved that Takale steered them into it feeds on fear. But I also, despite the fact that Pavo insisted, and I'm still not quite sure why, that it feared them, I loved the contrast of the two. So I do like that. It's like, oh, if you try to demoralize, it also deals damage. Really, really neat. Yeah. But I also like the idea of like, what if when it gains the frightened condition, it still has the frightened condition, but it also gives them a bonus while being frightened because they're feeding on it. And when you make it afraid, it gets a bonus somehow, which just makes it so very otherworldly. So what if it gets like a bonus to its damage or something like that? Just something crazy like that, gain extra damage, or I don't know. But suddenly you get a downside, but you've also given it an improvement in the same motion. How can you?
I guess it depends on like the biggest thing I guess with this homebrew is that I don't think this creature inherently wants to kill everyone. It definitely wants people to still be alive because it needs it to perpetuate itself. And so like when you run encounters, you can be absolutely brutal in the first 2 rounds, put people in the dirt, but then you're just going to be like slow, methodical serial killer walk at them.
Right.
And so like if it feeds on fear, I would just make the DC for spells go up.
Okay. For its spells or okay. That's not a bad idea at all. Yeah.
Or it maybe I guess it depends on like if you want to make it to it would have to depend on the creature, right? Like if it's more bestial and it's like going in there and swinging claws around, then maybe it's to hit like for weapons. But like when I look at this creature, like I picture more like poltergeisty, like like from the fog, like just assaulting your brain. But that to me is more terrifying than an animal is. Like I know that a bear would probably kick my ass, but I could at least fight a bear. Whereas like a ghost, I cannot fight a ghost, so that would terrify me way more.
Cam, I know you're large, but you can't fight a bear.
I just said I know a bear would kick my ass. I just said that.
You said you think it would. It would.
It depends on the size of the bear
and what type. You can probably tangle with a black bear and scare it away, but you haven't seen the grizzlies up here. You start tangling with a claw.
Oh no, I've heard it here first in Tennessee. Like
Cam has no problem punching a baby panda in the face.
Yeah, absolutely. I could beat a panda in a fight, no problem. A koala bear. I could beat a koala bear. Fuck you, Freeman. There's a couple bears I could beat.
There is something
Uncharted North knows that neither panda nor koala are actual bears.
But for the bit,
you're not wrong about how this thing doesn't want to kill everyone. However, there is a certain I would argue there's a certain motivation for it to kill plenty because it needs to perpetuate the tale of itself. And the more it kills and the different ways that it kills, the more the belief is likely to spread and in different ways, which conjures more belief. And like, yes, the more that people believe a specific thing, that's the power it gains. However, the more belief, no matter how unspecific it is, the more it can survive. So there's a give and take to that, right?
I think James had
something. But dead men tell no tales.
Yeah.
But those who see the results, they tell many tales. Those who don't have the information but see a little bit. just like the players in the Patreon Lounge channel, right? You
I
give
guess it
them
kinda
something and
depends
they run with it.
Yeah, I guess it kind of depends on how you want to build the creature.
And the town
So-
is in and stuff. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. So when I look at this, when I look at the stat block, when I look at the concept behind it, I actually really love what you did there, Freeman, and kind of build an impromptu cult around the creature, because it requires belief, and it requires people to believe in what it wants it to believe in, or if it becomes sentient enough, requires belief in what it wants it to believe in. So as I'm wont to do, if I were to run this creature, it would be the central thesis of a campaign. And we would start with a small cult in a small town, and it would become a larger cult and a larger cult, and they kill in the name of this creature, and they start taking on the guise of this creature. You know, instead of one, there's many. So the cultists dress like they think the creature is. The creature gets more powerful, gains sentience, and then, as I'm wont to do, I would just immediately start borrowing from pop culture.
Yeah.
This is, to me, the perfect creature to build in, like a Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. So you've got the duality of this creature wanting to grow and get more powerful, but you've also got it needing people to be afraid of it. So I love the idea that it creates this cult, and then it, later in the campaign, it petitions the cult or tells the cults all of these stories about its bride or its partner, and it creates this secondary brainchild based out of the belief of the cult. So they're both being powered by this cult. It's the only way to wipe it out. So you've got a direct line to ending this creature's lineage, but the longer you don't tackle that problem, the more powerful not only it gets, but more powerful its partner gets. So maybe when you hit level 12, it spawns. There's a second one. And then every level after that, each one of them, one or the other, gain a new ability. So this one's now resistant. This one's now weak. This one, you can do two sides of the same coin. But I like the idea of building the big bad along with the party through reports of their spies or the cultists who managed to survive or get away or what have you. And you would need to run the cultists in such a way where their job is to go in, murder people like this Brainchild would, and then get the fuck out of Dodge. Like, it is more important that they get out of there than they complete their actual mission, because the rumors are more important than the results.
Yep.
So
I love that. I love that social side of it. Like, it's something I never thought of. Like, it is very much intelligent enough to have been created and then see how it can create more belief for itself.
Yeah.
It's got those deception bonuses. It's got the intimidation bonuses. Why not use those? I love the idea of forming a cult and then convincing the cult to believe in something that forms a second one. I love that idea. I think it's really, really neat. And it makes you think of, like, you also have this risk. Like, if you feel as though, if you present this creature as the leader of a cult in a way, whether that cult's in a town or what have you, or at least something remote, based on how you present it, you kind of run a weird risk of, like, giving this unspoken permission to your players that anyone who believes needs to die. And you can, like, lead your characters into becoming murder hobos. But then I love the idea of, like, maybe they suddenly believe that all needs to die but one, and we just need to convince that one. At least we can save that one life, convince that one that thing doesn't exist. But then suddenly the thing becomes does it start sowing the seed somewhere else? It does have a base instinct to hunt and track those who believe in it. It's more powerful as it hunts those things. So if there's only one believer left, does it become like a slithering tracker from 5e where it obsessively hunts it down? And if it does it destroy itself? It would be a lot of interesting moral questions that the players would have to go through, depending on how you present it, especially as a leader of a cult. I think that's really cool.
Yeah.
I love that.
And you could run a bunch of side missions where they're just going to find out the history of the origin of this Brainchild. They're tracking down kind of what we do to prepare for the show, tracking down the earliest known reference to the bogeyman or whatever. So they're doing research. You can implement the research system that we all love, and we do.
And maybe realizing that the sorcerer from 100 years ago that Cam mentioned, that's not actually the enemy. It's rather the rumor that surrounded after the death of said sorcerer, and so they're like digging into the history of the town. But it turns out the history of the town is not really helping, other than, after the death. The history after the death is more important than the history before, and people don't realize that right away. So that's really cool to play with.
It has the makings of a really long-term mystery. Like, this could remain a mystery for 15 levels. Like, it has that power. So the whole campaign is, I don't want to say fetch quest, but a fetch quest where you just go to, this is where they were born, this is where they died, this is where they're enshrined, this is where they went to school. Like, you've got all these opportunities to explore the history of this NPC, where you as a GM can really flex your muscles in like flashback scenes, in ghost role play, bringing in some undead creatures, tomb guardians, that kind of thing. Like, there's a Sura, like there's a lot of room to really, like, we said it before that creatures are a blank slate, but I think this might actually be the only true blank slate creature we've ever seen.
I mean, it's damn closest for sure, as written. Yeah.
I think there is an interesting thing, though, that I think we've kind of missed in the persistence of memory. When a brainchild is destroyed, it returns if anyone still fully believes it exists. So even if you destroy the brainchild in front of the cult and they see it disappear, if they go out into the town and commit that act of murder that looks like the brainchild again, and the peasants out there believe it, it's back again. Like, so done. Even if you convince the cult to not, like, if one of, like, okay, yeah, I saw it die, but I'm going back out there to keep doing it, like, it will persist and bring it back.
Like, the way the social experiment ended is that if they fight it and defeat it, it's definitely coming back.
Yeah.
Like, there's no way around it. The whole town believes there's a whole cult involved in it. Right. And so it's not an ending to that situation by any stretch of the imagination. That really does make it scary, doesn't it? That alone just makes it
gives
terrifying.
you the opportunity to bring a big bad from one campaign into another. So that campaign ends at level 12 when you kill the brainchild. The next campaign begins, and level 4, level 5, you start to sprinkle in these little rumors. Maybe a cultist mask shows up, or one of their very special blue gemmed kukris, or whatever kind of artifacts. Like, your new campaign starts unearthing these concepts of the old campaign, and your player's sphincters will tighten. I guarantee you. 4th level, if you get the makings of a brainchild. Wow.
Oh, that'd be awesome. What a fascinating creature. I did have some other ideas of, like, sort of abilities, like maybe it can also be kind of swapped out for the options that are there. There was some mention of, like, it having affecting their senses quite a bit. I thought it'd be really cool, like, if you swapped the aura for, like, something similar to the gibbering mouther, where, like, when you're standing around it, it's just like this murmuring sound is happening and confuses you. What if it has an ability or a passive ability that makes it concealed within a place with lots of sound, such as a murmuring room or a waterfall or something like that, for whatever reason, and suddenly it's under the effects of blur, so it's, like, partially concealed just because of sound happening, which is messing with your senses. Like, really obscure things like that could be really fun. I was reminded of, I can't remember the name of the spell from 5e, where it forces you to just, like, dance or laugh or something like that, and you just can't help yourself.
There was a creature in Pathfinder 1 called the Dance Macabre.
Macabre.
That that literally you just danced yourself to death. It was a very high CR too.
I think we covered that when we covered the little, like, earth fae creatures as well. The name is slipping from me right now, but they had a weird story built on that as well. I love that idea. What if there was an aura that's part of the reason that I didn't think of it when I wrote it, but it's like, maybe that's part of the reason in the festival people are randomly jumping out and starting dances. It's because this creature is affecting them in some way. Maybe you can cause a player to, like, have to, like, dance, and it limits, they, like, puts them, like, greater difficult terrain kind of thing. They're quarter their speed, or they have to, they effectively become stupefied or something like that for when they're casting spells, and those sorts of ideas. I think it'd be really cool. Also, because I mentioned, and the players mentioned and later brought it up, the idea of it being able to smell sins. Was like, why not give it scent sins, whatever that may be, something like that. getting into like some Rune Lord territory there.
Yeah.
Tasha's hideous laughter, and there's
the
a
one.
higher level one.
Is there? Yeah.
Oh, there's uncontrollable dance in 2E.
Yeah.
Is there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Synesthesia comes to mind too when it comes to senses. Just a gnarly spell. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Are you guys familiar
I also
with
loved the idea because they were so obsessed with their gear being missing, despite me never saying it. I thought, what if there was some sort of illusory aura that makes you believe that something is missing when it's not, such as your own weapons? In a way, it seems like it might be kind of too powerful. I think I'm not really sure. I really wanted to ask Cam about this one, and my gut tells me, "Ooh, that's a big one." Like, how do you go about the motions of disbelieving that?
You just give them a will save, and if they fail, they can no longer see their weapon. They still have it. They can no longer see it, and they take a -1 to attack because they can't see their weapon anymore. So that balances itself out.
Yeah.
Or you could even go down the disarm treat if you want instead too. For
that'd be interesting. Yeah.
There's also third level non-detection, which we covered 2 weeks ago with the Shaoqin.
Right.
Protective ward that makes the target difficult to detect via magic. So you could put that theoretically on a creature or an object because that's what it targets. So you can just use, like reskin that spell.
Oh, because this creature is immune to detection itself. It can like apply that to something else. It's on its own. That's a neat idea. I like that. That's pretty cool. Interesting. Yeah. I'd love to know more ideas. It's swimming with options in what I did. We're swimming with options just on our own experiences. Surely there's more out there, and probably some really crazy ones too. I'd really love to know if there's anyone had any stories too. But.
I have one idea that could get out of hand. Are you guys familiar with the parlance hot swapping, or is that just the circles that I run in?
Yeah.
Rings a bell.
Okay, so the concept of hot swapping is, in the way that I'm familiar with the term, it's when a computer is on, you can take out a drive and put it back in. So like the SATA standard, the serial ATA standard, is a hot swappable standard. So at any point you can pull a hard drive out or an SSD and put it back in. Not an NVMe, not a PCI, just so we're clear there.
Sure.
But SATA specifically is hot swappable. So when the computer's on, you can pull it out and put it back in. You shouldn't if it's your boot drive, but everything else is fine.
Right. Okay. Gotcha.
So with that 500 range of message, I like the idea that this thing is so powerful. It just, hey, little Jimmy, I need fire resistance. So you're going to believe that I'm resistant to fire. And it just starts hot swapping abilities based on what the PCs are doing because it's got this little...
It uses one action to do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Especially if in a cult setting, it's like, okay, I've convinced
quick,
this many to believe this many to believe that. I know I have a margin of switching one belief to the other, and that's insane.
Yeah,
that gets out of hand
gets
real quick.
Out of hand.
Really
what was that creature I did recently that has like the energy absorption? I can't remember, but something along those lines would be pretty interesting.
Yeah.
The Hadronex episode 109.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, that was an
so
early.
Like you attack it with a damage and it becomes resistant to it. Mm-hmm. So something like that I think could be real vicious, especially against a more limited party. But it's an interesting idea that it could just at any point be like, okay, hey, remember that time you saw me walk through flames? And the kid's like, yeah, I saw you walk through flames. And all of a sudden it's resistant to fire or...
Yeah. That's sort of the beauty of it too, right? Because like we know that, what's the phrase for it? Like witness testimony is not very reliable, you know?
Yep.
I remember reading about this experiment done where they had people stand in front of a vending machine for a specific amount of time, like 10 minutes or 30 minutes, something like that, something ridiculous. And only some of them they told to buy an item. And then when they went back and asked, like they waited like months and then brought them all back in and asked them, did you buy an item when we did that thing? And a good number of the ones who didn't buy one were convinced that they had. They were so sure that they had bought an item because they imagined it and it locked into their mind and their memory. It's like the wildest thing to like play with. And
eyewitness testimony isn't nearly as reliable as we depend on it being.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
I do like the idea of using message though, because that does make it cost an action for the creature to do
Yeah.
it. So it does have a semblance of balance. It's not just bullshit.
But that you have
Yeah.
you got to be careful because it's built in there that like they can do the seek or the sense motive to, as a group, your players as a group can kind of remove one of these abilities if they all disbelieve it the appropriate way. It's an action tax for everyone in the party, which is a lot, but I would want to be careful of just like circumventing that with one action via the
like if they manage to overcome, like, we all don't believe in the resistance, okay, you can't hot swap that one anymore, but you can hot swap your weakness until they check through it.
It's not the resistance in fire.
The way I would do it is if
all.
it starts with 5, they disbelieve it now has 4 that I can hot swap, and then it has 3 that I can hot swap, and then 2, and then it's got the 1 that I can hot swap between.
Yeah.
And I would go down the line like that. Like if they disbelieve its immunity, it can no longer hot swap immunity. It can only do
I think that's a
resistance.
wicked interesting idea for a higher level version of this creature.
Yeah, I'm not talking about level 11.
Yeah, it's definitely able
I'm
to
talking
swap
about
these things
campaign
out.
under
15,
Yeah, you got to
16,
bleed them down.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be really cool. Yeah, what a crazy combat that would be.
Real video gaming, you beat the boss, you got to do it again. You got to do it again.
Yeah.
And it would be really interesting to hamper the PC's action economy like that, because at some point, they're all going to be like, okay, well, we all have to take this one action every fucking turn.
Right.
Yep.
Nobody wants that.
And the class that I'm playing currently, to lose an action would be detrimental. Like it would be, I would become borderline useless in combat. Like it's the economy's that important to my current class that like
the action economy
becomes
in shambles.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so.
Yeah, it really does. Yeah. Well, awesome. I guess that's it for me. Anything else?
I think the biggest thing with this creature though is be flexible and have the level by DC handy, so that you can hot swap these things in and still keep a semblance of balance. If you want to run this creature, I also recommend perusing through the monster creation rules or the creature creation rules, because that's how I've come to like learn DCs and like what means what, and just able to kind of like, I'm going to wiggle these numbers a little bit to get the result that I'm looking for.
Yeah.
But in Pathfinder,
which I did mention earlier, like the stat block specifically says like be careful about overpowering it, and like if and I mentioned like if you are familiar with the creature building rules, you have a lot more flexibility here to like increase or decrease its level. It's definitely great advice.
Swapping out spells, like adding like little utility spells, like flavor spells that like fog. That can be difficult just because it can add concealment. So be careful there, but like in terms of just using it for, I'm sorry,
just like little cantrips,
small things, little extra attacks or something,
maybe swap out the Phantasmal Killer for Fireball if they've leaned into this as a fiery creature. I don't know.
Like,
sure,
Find spells of equal rank, and you can pretty much just move them in and out as you feel necessary. It's, that's
just don't,
pretty straight.
The idea is like don't add too much, don't stack too much. Just swap out,
because like I said, if this is a level 9 party, like Phantasmal Killer has a very real chance of killing your fighter.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
On that note, spoilers for STT episode 78 and beyond. Freeman, if Gilda comes back as a fucking brainchild, I'm gonna quit the fucking network.
I wouldn't dream of it. I would not. I did consider using this creature in my very early ideas for the episode 100 series. But it got dashed eventually. But it was one of the earliest ideas I had. For sure, but no, I would never do that to you. I saw the blow that I dealt.
My heart hurts.
Yeah, I was vicious.
Well, thank you so much for joining us for this, Cam. Your insight is invaluable, and it's always just a pleasure to hang out and get to chat with you.
Happy to.
This is going to be our second longest episode ever by a country mile. So. Thank you, listeners, for sticking around.
Get in the Discord.
Get in the Discord.
Join us. But you could have been a part of that social experiment.
Yeah.
Hit the Discord, hit the Patreon, my friends.
Yeah, and that is patreon.com/Uncharted North. $5 a month gets you a handwritten thank you letter. $10 a month you can suggest a creature, and it will give you a discount code for our merch store. All the links are in the description, socials, all that kind of stuff. If you're on the YouTube, they're scrolling down below. You can hop on over. The Discord is unchartednorth.com/Discord. That'll pop you right into our Discord if you have an account, which is great. You can just jump in and hit our terms and conditions and start hanging out. As a patron, you get access to special channels where Freeman ran these interactions, and I believe that the 5 of us kind of take priority on answering stuff from Patreon, but we're all over the Discord, and we have such an absolute stellar community. We're so lucky to have everybody there, including Cam, PJP, Pavo, Dr. Teeth and the Electric Mayhem, all that good stuff. They're all fantastic. Everybody I forgot. Thank you so much for watching, listeners. This has been a long one. We really appreciate you putting up with Encounter Me. You're gonna have to let us know in the comments or the Discord, or fire us off angry emails if you ever want that shit to happen again. But I promise you, if it does, I'm gonna edit it before he goes on his tirade.
That's why I'm the chief creative officer.
Yeah. But if you can, rate and review on your platform of choice. It's free. It helps. And tell a friend. But thank you, as always. And we'll see you again in 2 weeks with, I think we're going to go back to the First World.
Nice. Can't wait. Thanks for hanging on, friends.
Until next time, creatures, thanks, as always, for listening to Encounter This.